Hello, everybody. This is Bart Sharp, and you are on Becoming Quantum Conscious at United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 103.5, broadcasting out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. Also, we're on the UPRN Talk Radio website, Roku, YouTube, and Facebook. Wow. Hope everybody's doing well out there. There's all kinds of different things happening. I'm glad January is over. I'm not a January person. I have a January curse personally. That something weird always happens to me, and there's really not much I can do about it. I just have to bear it. It always surprises me. I'll tell him, and everybody goes, "Oh, you got emotional issues there." It's like, yes, I've looked at the emotional issues. I'm really good at that type of stuff, and still they keep coming up. Life is full of highs and lows, and we just can't have much polarity about our lows, much like with our highs. And if we live both of them fully, they just keep getting better. And that is my thought for today. And I think it's a profound thought because it pairs up with who we have as a guest today, Collette Corcoran, who the last show we had was one of my favorites of 2025. So welcome to the show, Collette.
Well, thank you, Bart, and it's absolutely amazing to be back. And wow, you've set the bar high for this show to be really as interactive as the last one. But yeah, I'm with you. January is a difficult month for me too, and working with the Druid wheel, it's meant to be quite difficult actually for the psyche. So I'm there with you in the highs and the lows, and like you say, this will lead us so well into our discussion that I know that you're as equally as enthusiastic about as I am.
Oh, I love this topic, which the topic today is when Eros meets Logos, living with charity, soul, and purpose. Um, I just love it. Um, so I just wanted to start the show with giving a little bit of your bio. Collette Corcoran is the visionary founder of the Sacred Rose Temple Mystery School, a global initiatory path devoted to the embodiment of the feminine mysteries. An international teacher, Druid priestess, and faculty member at the Shift Network, Collette guides women into deep remembrance, where ancient wisdom, somatic embodiment, and modern psycho-spiritual healing converge. Um, yeah, so much with womb wisdom, sacred sexuality, chakra and energy alchemy, Jungian informed psycho-spirituality, psychological astrology, and Druidism, shamanism. Yeah, you walk with a big package is all I can say. And I just...
Been in my Eros.
Yes, indeed you are. I just kind of messed up with my computer. There we are. I looked kind of bewildered. That's why. So here we are with Eros and Logos. Maybe we should start with, what did those words mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, these are words that I've batted around in the many different subjects that I've studied in. And I think, looking at references from like Plato and the Jungian work and the Gnostic work, how do we kind of define those words in one stream? So I have, just to try to make it easier so that it can land. Well, Eros for me is really about soul, desire, and embodiment. If I could sum it up in three words, it would be those three things: soul, desire, and embodiment. And logos would be mind, structure, and reason.
Mm.
And it took me a long time to nail those words down, but they were words that I felt also exploded open. So like if we go to logos and mind, we could like think of intellect and, you know, strategy and all of those things. But I think it's such a huge topic, isn't it, Bart,
Yeah.
to define such huge subjects.
So just for those who kind of glossed over, maybe they got a blankness in their mind or something. Those six magic words that you said, could you just state them again?
Yeah, so Eros would be soul, desire, and embodiment. And
Yeah,
then Logos would be the mind, structure, and reason.
yeah. We could just go on and on about all of what that is. I mean, when
Mm.
you work with this something in the shamanic realms and the intuitive realms and psychological or emotional, spiritual development, those words are kind of like key words. You know, how do you find your desire to be who you
Mm.
are? What is your soul? What exactly? Well, I don't think you can get an exact description of that, at least in my book. That's a hard one. It's that essence of who you are. When it,
Mm.
is that how you see it?
Yeah, I mean, who are we to kind of try to even label that apart from trying to explain only through our own experience of it? How do we feel? What's our experience of our own version of what soul is? Because, you know, philosophers over the years and psychotherapists and shamans have tried to describe it, but I think it's an experience that you can word from your own personal, you know, experience of it, and you go for it, you try that because I try to define it, and it kind of gets you into this really deep, well, thought process, logos, and a
Mm-hmm.
really deep feeling process, eros. So
Yeah.
I think what you did was genius. To write those words down is to really begin to explore them. So if you even just start there with those six words on a piece of paper and then start to just map them, like what do they mean to you? How do you experience? What conversation does it bring up for you? What debates? That would be a huge way to start to explore these two at a very foundational level.
Indeed. And I think so many people that are wanting to have a higher vibration of consciousness or spirituality, soul desire, embodiment is the question they're asking. They function in their mind quite well. The whole world seems to be very masculine and that's how it all works. However, for the last 20, 30 years, we've stepped into how do we find our desire? What is embodiment for me? And how does that drive something so much deeper, uh, soul oriented?
Yeah, embodiment, I think, is a key word here. I mean, I really wanted to start off with embodiment because I think that we're living in a world largely, as you say, everything seems pretty crazy. And I think there's just this lack of foundational eros that begins in the body. We're very logos driven. We're like mind, intellect, thinking fast, what's next? The body was actually the first place I started on my spiritual journey as a somatic practitioner. I trained in yoga from very young, and the concept of the body opened up this whole field of eros for me. I could sense something that was happening in me, touching soul, feeling desire, you know, feeling this something moving inside of me, and then inquiring with intellect or logos into that took me into studies. But I think it's really important, if we're to discuss these, is like, what does it mean to be in the body first of all? Because I think it's seriously, I feel 2026 is going to be about this. You know, we've got this fire horse energy coming in, and the fire horse is the body, horse is the body. So coming into the feminine principle, or the Eros, we can all start there by, we are born in a body, we're born in a physical body. And what does that mean? And I wanted to start off with our viewers tonight, just to get this as an experiential experience of Logos and Eros. So if I can, I'd love to start with the Eros and just get everybody to just take a minute to take a big deep breath, and maybe close your eyes if you feel that you wish to do it this way. And just notice where your feet are first of all. And notice that you may have not even noticed your feet today. So just take a little hello to the feet and just begin to use your mind to crawl up the body, imagining the legs, the knees, and just find your seat where you're sat. And coming up into the heart, the beat of the heart. And really important when we come into Eros, I think, is the breath. So just feeling, first of all, what it's like to take a big, deep inhalation. And take a big exhalation, a sigh that lets the nervous system settle. And you can do that a couple of times to just really feel that the inhale is bringing in this life force. The exhale is allowing release. And when we exhale and we release, we kind of sit further in our body. So just take a little smooch and sit in your seat a little more and feel the weight of your body and allow it. Eros is not a new concept. Your body knows it. It was born with it. And it's a matter of just taking that breath in now and breathing into the body in search of the Eros. And as you go in, I want to just plant some words. And as I say the words, breathe them in the body and see if you can locate them. You might not, it doesn't matter. Let it go if it doesn't happen. But see if you can get a sense of these words with every breath. So aliveness, desire, embodiment, vitality, sensuality, creativity, your imagination, intimacy, your instinct, presence, soul. And you can take a deep breath to search for that. Felt meaning. And an animating force. Just feel with your inhalation and your deep exhalation as though you're enlivening all those words back in your body. They're already there. You're just activating them. That's Eros. There's some words that allow you to connect to the nature of Eros in your body. And then if we take a big clearing exhalation, I'm just going to quickly take you into Logos so you can feel the difference between the principles of these two. And just feel yourself clearing and clearing. Let the Eros exhale. And And then you're going in search of the logos in the body. Where does it sit in the body as I say these words? Notice where the principle goes. When I say and you breathe the word clarity, discernment, meaning, orientation, structure, coherence, inner authority. Conscious choice, articulation, boundaries, truth, integration, responsibility, and finally, purpose. And then with your breath, just take in the activation of logos in the body.
Mm.
So how did that feel, Bart? What were you sensing as you moved
Well,
from one to the other?
every word had a certain sensual activation in my body. One would be in the second chakra, one would be in the heart, different parts of the brain, different feelings that would show up that would resonate in a certain area of my body. It really gives you some insight about the soul. When we think about the soul, we think about, oh, this is our deep purpose that we've had all of our lives, and maybe it's past lives, and it rolls along through that, which I'm sure that has a big relevance. However, the soul's purpose is also being in clarity of the moment about what facilitates you in the highest forms, or what you really find meaningful in your life. The soul follows in that development as well.
Yeah.
What a wonderful exercise.
I could feel when I've done that exercise. I love that you've gone to soul, like your psyche's pulled you to something to muse upon and to feel into. For me, I get this really deep logos. For me, is very up here. I kind of feel all those words
Mm-hmm.
from the heart up. And then
Yes,
when I work with the Eros, it's more down in my body for me. And I
yes.
love what that exercise does. Is Bart just demonstrated that you're such you're the
Mm-hmm.
perfect student there, is that something will pull you to want to negotiate or speak with to it more. And for you, you went straight into that feeling and wondering of soul. So I think that's a really good exercise to play with these energies, principles within our bodies.
Yes. It's funny, when you went to desire, it went into my heart about what that source of desire is, which you would think, oh, that would be in my second chakra, or that'd be something very grounded in me. But no, it's that balance between the two. The desire is something that takes us to higher forms.
Yeah, I mean, Plato said that what we desire, we do not yet fully possess. when he was
Mhm.
speaking on Eros. So what you just see how like this philosophy's out there from these great
Yes.
minds, and you've just had this experiential like experience in your own body that led you straight from soul to desire. And that's the intelligence of your psyche. It knows these things. So yeah, that desire comes from what we do not fully possess. So we're desiring spiritual attainment. Me and you, we have this like deep thirst to want to embody the feminine, and that's because our soul is trying to fully kind of possess that in us. It's our learning, our life force leading us to the very lessons that we need and want.
Yes. Also, I mean, there is this, you could easily say, well, the feminine is Eros and the masculine is Logos, but that isn't exactly it. They both cross over. The inner child begins in Eros, but if it's balanced, it starts to have Logos. It begins to cultivate the ideas that they gather in the world into something that fits their emotional being. It's that interchange between the two that we grow together with both forms.
Yeah. I think that's beautifully put. I love to work with anima and animus with women in my mystery school. I think it's very easy to determine that anima is the feminine principle and animus is the masculine principle. And they're, of course, linked to Eros and Logos. And they're very definitive through the sexual principle, which can bog us down. So Eros and Logos, I think, is the next step that I always take to go into. It's more looser. It has the more opportunity for you to engage in your own musings on or thoughts about. Whereas I find that with anima and animus, the male and female, that I tend to use it as a foundation for people to just kind of say, what does masculine energy look like in me? And what does it feel like for me in feminine energy? That's what I did all the work with my Jungian analyst, is really understanding what was very masculine behavior or feminine behavior principles. And then I could then easily work with the Eros and Logos, which seemed like a whole ocean of things that were more difficult for me to grasp hold of. So that's why I think the
Yeah.
words were helpful for me to like drink in, think about, sit with, work with, because all of this is, up here.
Mm-hmm.
It can float around Eros and Logos. And that's what the Eros principle really asks us to do, is to bring it into the body. And I find that a lot of people get stuck with this on a spiritual path
Oh, they do.
and make action, take action from it.
Yeah, and that's, I just wondered how many people do you encounter with clients and in your classes and various encounters where everything in their desire was formulated by their parents. In other words, they're doing their life because they thought their mother wanted them to do it this way. And they turn, 30, 40, even 50 years old, and they're going, I really don't know what my desires is. I mean, there's real typical ones like, oh, I want to have success. I want to have romance. I want to have these things that everybody's doing, but I know there's something deeper. What the heck would that desire be for me? You find people like
all,
that?
all, all. Unless you're not conscious of it. I think everybody has been shaped by, we're all trying to still please the parents. Either we're conscious of it or we're just not conscious of it. That has shaped us for sure. I mean, who deep down inside in a child wants to disappoint their parents? Zero. We might go through rebellions later on. I mean, I definitely did that. But I think I got to a point, as you say, that my own desires became really apparent. It felt rebellious. And actually, I hadn't realized, even though I rebelled massively, that even the rebellion was caught up still in trying to please them or displease them. So, yeah, one had gone through that stage. And then it takes a lot of bravery, doesn't it? Especially if the parents are living, to say, this is who I am. And I remember leaving like the educational consultancy and my home and my marriage and everything. I'm thinking my parents are going to think I've lost the plot. And they did. That was the beginning when I said, I don't care what my friends think, what my mum and dad thinks, what my siblings think, what the community thinks, because I was holding a big spiritual community space back in England. I'm giving this up and I'm going to change my life. And that, I think, is when Eros fully awakened, not fully, and no one's there, but really awakened in my body. And I could not do anything to push that down anymore.
Mm. What does it feel like when you find it?
It's all consuming. It's horrific because you have this logos eros pull that they were not integrated for me at all. So logos would say to me, no, you've got to be in this structure, you've got to be in this framework, this is how you live life. And my eros wanted to burn it all in the pits of Kali and walk out through the flames completely utterly naked and scorched. And Eros won. She won. And
Mm.
I know that's the strength of the Eros. And she thought that she could sail that, ship without Logos. And that wasn't the case. Eventually, I had to bring Logos in and say, okay, help me structure this. Help me put this in a direction. Don't let this burn me, because
Yeah.
we can get lost in the Eros. Eros can send us wild. So there is the time that they begin to want to work together, but it's a
Yeah.
holy fight.
It is. And it was so amazing with you. I'm going to hold this thought and just let everybody know that you are listening to Becoming Quantum Conscious at United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 103.5 out of New Orleans, Louisiana. My name is Bart Sharp, and our guest today is Collette Corcoran. You can find her at www.templedelarose.com. That's part English, part French. Temple de la Rose. I love it. And what amazes me about you, Collette, is you're paying the bills with this. This is your livelihood to take this, and you've taken the bull by the horns, as we say in Texas. I don't think that's an English expression, is it? But it demands more of you. It demands that you get it as clean as possible, because you're teaching it. You are on that place. So when we talk about getting deep into that Eros, you're carrying such a exploration for everybody with that. And at the same time, you're trying to have a balance with that by running a business. They both demand from you, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel quite emotional as you said that because it's not been easy. Like, we can sit here, I can say, oh, it's very glamorous doing the work I do. It isn't. It's been super difficult. It's challenging. I am constantly having to hold myself accountable for doing the inner work myself, as well as, I've got to be running forward with clients biting my heels. And if they're not biting my heels, I'm not creating enough space for transformation. And in order to create transformation, I need to transform as well. So it's been really, really, I look back and think, oh gosh, if I could have just stayed and not awoke to this, life
I could
would
have
have
been a
been,
school teacher. Yeah.
it would have just been a lot simpler. And there are days I sit and think, why did this happen to me? Like, why is there this pull that constantly is there from the minute I wake up to the moment I go to sleep at night? When it fully erupts, and this is what I love doing with women whose Eros has gone dormant, is I love to help them awaken it.
Yeah.
Because once that awakens fully, you don't have a choice anymore. There's no more saying, I don't want this, I don't want. It really pulls you along, and you need to get that logos in order so that it can make it productive, purposeful, in support of community and humanity, and not self-serving.
Well, it's always amazing me the role with women, because traditionally it's been you hold the matriarchy of the family, you hold the spirit of the family, you have babies, you make sure the whole family is managed and going on. It's super multitasking. And then in the last 40 years, oh, now you need to go out and get a job. You need to help support the family and become your own inner self through your work. And you're like, come on, I already got a job. But it's that huge demand that women are finding. I think it really makes women sometimes dig a little deeper, that they
Yeah.
have to
I mean,
find it.
yeah, I think this has been the imbalance of the logos that affected us as women, because we drank that in, that was happening within our own psyche. Me, I will hold my hand up, wanting to lead in my field and run a business and open a yoga studio, and I was running at pace of a unregulated logos animus driven woman. And it was on my mat in yoga that I found that Eros principle that was really trying to pull me back into balance. And this is where we come out blame to the sex, like toxic masculinity and all of that is nonsense. Like, because we hold logos and eros within us, these feminine masculine principles, the world out there is just a result of what's going on inside of us, regardless of what sex we say we are or identify with. And I think that's what we really need to own, is that we as women as well, unless we've done a radical amount of work, we hold a lot of logos energy. That's why out there, logos is running the field without the deeper embodiment of eros. And it's not down to a man or a woman to change that. It's down to all of us. We all, in any gendered body, have I think we need to do this. We need to start looking at what our logos and what our eros is like within our own body first.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just think of the masculine right now. It can get really simplified for the masculine in the worst ways, of that everything matters to money, physical gratification, and the security that you have both of those taken care of, and in good food, and they can get that simple, and it doesn't leave much space for anything else when you're in that thing. And then you want more of it and more of it and more power, and it never fills anyone up, whether you're a man or a woman. That's the part that seems to be missing. How does a logos persona learn to expand into more?
In the body, ultimately, first and foremost, get in the body. We're also super fast, and this marrying of the two really calls for a slower, talking about the action, like living it now. We need to make sure that we try to simplify things, that we pull things back at a lower pace. We're kind of racing through life as a species, as people. That logos really needs to have this space to sit in stillness. I often ask women, when did you last, forget all your fancy spiritual practices. When did you just last sit still, breathe, and come to a still point?
Mm.
That in itself, everything, it's a vacuum. Everything falls into that still point, to that peaceful point. That's where all the moving of the inner world can start to take form. So logos is so busy doing and acting in the world that unless we create these, that's why we find a lot of men in, meditation or yoga, they find their eros because they actually just stop. They just stop and let a rhythm come through them. And I think this is key, Bart. This rhythm that's inside of us that belongs to the earth, this frequency. How often are we tuned into that? That is the dynamic resonance of Logos and Eros meeting, the heartbeat, the internal rhythm, the Schumann, the beat of the earth. And we would have done that in ancient times. We would have been in resonance with that earth's heartbeat. And we've lost that.
Yeah. And when we do lose it, we want gratification to stimulate us so we feel something. I was just reading about somebody, I mean, their diet's a famous person, I won't say the name. He's really busy, and he's like, obsessed with McDonald's French fries because they're stimulating and very salty. But it's kind of like, oh, I got to put something in me so I can feel like I'm moving. Whereas if you're in that stillness, you're actually moving. You're actually getting something to move inside of you that is real. How much do
It's the
you,
yin and the yang meeting.
yeah, how much do you recommend people just put all their attention to their heart and listen to other people with their heart in that quiet space inside?
Yeah. Yeah. Few people can do that for themselves. Few people are unable to sit and listen to their own heartbeat and their own breath. So there's no way that that can correlate to another person. I say anybody who's looking for devotional practice, start simple. Listen to your breath, listen to your heartbeat. Try to get another person in a room and listen to their breath. Try and be in that rhythm, internal rhythm together. It's a very profound practice. It's a tantric practice of just breathing and feeling the heartbeat of another person in a room. That will stimulate the marrying of Eros and Logos as well.
Yes, it is. And I always try to surprise my guests by asking this question at various times in the show and the listeners. Um, to tell you a little bit about Collette, she is a faculty member at the Shift Network, also has her own business and own classes and tours around, I guess, United States, England, France, doing classes of all sorts. You can find her work at www.templedelarose.com. But what else are you doing besides that? What if I missed in that equation that's kind of percolating?
Oh, there's a big percolation going on, Bart. You're right to intuit that. So I've got a new body of work that came out through a dream of actually Logos and Eros that was analyzed. I had this really crazy dream that I put myself in a somatic position, and this photographer came in front of me and said to me, "That is the marrying of your feminine and masculine energy. Do that position." And when I took that dream, I was so excited by it because I had a feeling I knew what it was about. And my analyst went crazy and said, "This is a body of work." And I said, I know it is. So I've developed something called Mythic Movement, and I am teaching three retreats in France at a very beautiful chateau, and they're called Lady of the Chateau, and this is all on the mythic self. And basically, there's a wonderful German photographer called Ida. She comes and photographs the women as goddesses, Persephone or Venus or the Muse. And I've been teaching classes to women about the archetypes and how they embody, everything we have outside of us as the goddess or the god is just a projection that we're not owning inside of ourselves. So,
Mm.
how do we own the qualities of these gods and goddesses in ourselves? That's what they're there for. And so they feel really empowered by these activations. And when they get photographed, they have the real look of Persephone or the wild feminine or the femme noir. We're doing the dark feminine as well on one retreat. So this is a new body of work. But from that, I've just been speaking to a big retreat center this week in England where I will be doing something called Becoming the Archetype. So that works on the goddesses, and then they create their own archetype and step forward into their life, into this embodied archetype, whichever comes through their psyche. But they will be doing a lot of practices to activate the logos and the eros within their body so that
Mm.
something can come forward that steps up and say, I'm your archetype that's going to step you forward into the next part of your life.
That's wonderful. I think when you really start to see what your archetype is, I use Rider Waite Tarot cards for this. In other words, in the last 20 years, there's been four major archetypal shifts I've made of being different personas, from the Fool to the Magician to the Emperor, and now the focus is strength, which strength is being able to do anything with as less effort as possible, but connected to as many things as possible. So it's all in the flow of life. Uh, that seems to be what my archetype is. So I just a big believer in that. So just a question for you. Is there anything else? Is there any other class that you got up there? Um,
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing an online class soon. I think it's next week on becoming the archetype. And that class is going to be about how you develop this archetype that comes from your own psyche. I'll be doing an hour and a half class on that.
wow.
And I will be making as well, I have someone making oracle cards from those archetypes. So four women have already submitted the field and four cards have come out. So hopefully by the end of that class, we're going to have a full pack of cards that are generated from the people's submissions of this archetype. So that's going on next week.
You are so out of the box, my friend. I've never heard of anybody approaching a workshop that way. It's so wonderful. Neat. Let's change the focus of the talk to what is it like when you start to really embody and act on or act through a highly developed eros and logos. I don't want to say balance, but full on. What's that like? What should we be looking for?
It's about noticing everything in action rather than, we can get caught up in the ego about how we are and what we're like, but our actions are the truth about how our Eros and our Logos are running the show, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
So this really helps with the women that I work with and with my own self into trying to, and it almost feels impossible, Bart, to feel how on a daily basis I'm balancing that because I'm a really bad student. Like today, I've worked all day. And so I've definitely been in Logos all day. Yeah. But I've recognized that. And I'm like, actually, how do I enter into no wonder like that my Eros today is lower because I'm too much in structure. I'm compressing the Eros into my laptop, into writing, into the Zoom calls. So this would allow me, say, for tomorrow, which I've already sorted, is that I need more Eros time. And what does that look like? So that would be sitting in meditation. I'm going to do a womb practice. It would mean maybe catching up with my creativity, going to a craft class. So it's really thinking on a mundane day-to-day basis, who's running the show here? I often get women who say, I'm really shut down. I can't move forward. I feel really stagnant. I'm stuck. This is the sign that Eros isn't moving. And so these are the questions I would ask, like, what does your day look like? Is it over structured? Is it under structured? And we can kind of make a, I always say Eros is like the river and Logos is like the banks. So the banks have to be there for the river to flow. So how are we creating the structures? Are we conscious of them, of how we allow this nature to come through? For me, Eros in our world is coming through sexually a lot because people don't know how else that works.
Yeah.
That fire, that Eros in us is connected to even the moments where I take 10 minutes off my desk and I go out and I look at the sunset and my body fills with the senses of, of the sunrise and the rays and noticing the golden textures and the pinks. This is Eros to notice this.
Yeah.
Logos does not notice that. They're too busy doing it. It's too busy holding.
Well, just to go back to sex, I think a lot of people think of sex as tension and release. And it has components of anger that want to get released through physical gratification and, of course, mothering and caring, all of that put into that box. Whereas they're forgetting about expansion and nurturing, that really what sex should be. So it's almost like putting a band-aid on something when you really want this high spiritual experience. Does that make sense with sex?
Completely, yeah. I mean, if you can speak to men about Eros and sex, like to pull the two apart, like when did you last feel Eros? What does that mean in your body? Kind of
Yeah,
erotic is more connected to women. They eroticize women, yet they're not owning it. That's what Jung would say would be the projection of the anima, the feminine principle of men on women, is that eroticizing of women, but pulling it back in. And what does eros and erotic and sensuality and creativity and all those things like feel like in a man's body? I work with loads of women, so I know what that feels like in women. I've had the words and the discussions.
yeah,
So it's that I hear a lot of the talks in psychology and spirituality about like young men like being lost in pornography and being lost in this world of like just being sexually satisfied rather, but it's because of Eros is missing. And
yeah,
this comes back to the things like Plato and the philosophers. Our education system doesn't allow for imagination and creativity as much as it should. So, at a foundational level in education, there should be this exploration of these things in a varied and well rounded education system that would allow both sexes to explore this eros and
yeah.
not only then understanding it through the world of sex.
Well, if we look at the male and female anatomy, the male is about giving. We give. And men, I don't think, realize that they're trying to be selfish, like something needs to fulfill me and gratify me, whereas opposed to, no, I become the hero by making things and building things and giving to my partner and As a woman, she receives it and expands it, and then I get that back. But it also is in creativity with men that they give, build, and something comes back to them. That to me has always been the male part that is different than women. And I don't think men are getting that too much these days.
I was going to say, I think you're quite unique in that aspect, that there seems to be a role reversal in that we are meant to overgive as women. I fall into that category. It's one of my deep wounds that is directed with my animus, and feeling that place of more being in Eros as receiving. Receiving is one of my keywords that I work with Eros, is receive, receive, receive. But that's a consciousness that you've just
Yeah,
stumbled on, Bart. Not stumbled, I can see that you've
yeah.
really embodied that. You've
Well,
made that conscious in your body.
and so when we look at a magician like you, if you're receiving as an observer, we're going, she's going to percolate and build some beautiful things. Flowers are going to come out of that mouth or out of your creations or whatever. That's going to be amazing
Yeah, yeah,
because you know how to percolate and build that in.
yeah. And imagine our world if we were all doing that, men, women, whatever gender we describe ourselves as. It's like, imagine if that was what was all around us, that was the symbiosis that was happening inside our body. We would not be living in this war-torn, violent world that we're living in. Something's wrong inside of us. And I'm not one to point fingers. I'm one to say, there's a distortion worldwide going on. And the only way we can solve it is to work on the individual self. And I think
Yeah,
starting with defining logos, eros, male, feminine within inside the self can really give you some idea of where you're out of balance and where you can come into more harmony. And if we work all on being on harmony on the individualistic level, imagine what it's going to look like out there. We'll be truly balanced.
indeed. That's wonderful. We're coming to the end of the show, so I want to have you end the show with just giving us a minute of a message that you would have for the world. And while you think of that and percolate that, I want to let everybody know that you've been listening to Collette Corcoran, and we are on the topic of Eros and Logos. But you can find Collette at www.templedelarose.com. My name is Bart Sharp, and this is Becoming Quantum Conscious at United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7, 103.5 out of New Orleans, Louisiana. So we say thank you to Cindy for joining in. So what wisdom do you want to end the show with, Collette?
Something big, Bart. Yeah, I want to just say, first of all, that if anybody wants to have a feel into the logos and the eros, I've got a little survey that I can email out to everybody. And you can do, it's like a chart that you determine what you're in balance with. And then there's a synopsis at the end. I'm going to add some other little goodies to that. So you can, with my website, go to there and join my mailing list, and I'll send that out this week with all the details of this wonderful show as well that Bart gifts the world. But I want to just finish on saying, I think an important message is that, the whole world is a reflection of what's going on an individual level. And as much as we're all really suffering with the injustices that are going on at the moment, the greatest thing that we can do is go inward and take a look at ourselves and try to, in a loving, compassionate, and nurturing way, see how we are on an individual level contributing to disharmony, and really try to bring ourselves into more harmony, to bring the eros and the logos into that divine union within ourselves, and know that if we do that, that will be reflected in the wider world. So we can do this, and we have got the power within us. We're not victims. This isn't all going to end dreadfully. This is a deep awakening for us to do the work so we can create the world that many of us and all of you that listen to Bart's show do envisage.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Collette. It's great having you on the show. And we'll see everybody next week on Becoming Quantum Conscious. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye for now.